How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned? How'd it get burned?
I don't know!
Welcome back, nerds. Fino here. You know Cascu, right? That chapter you definitely read and didn't skip? Come on, it's the least bad one until, like, Camelot, I guess. But I digress. Cascu is a 3-star caster and he's the game's second guaranteed freebie after Masher's Self. You also get a tutorial role, but you can't pick what's in it. So he's definitely going to be on your roster. Let's see what our old friend's been up to. Leading up Cascu's kit, we have Primeval Rune. This starts off as a 3-turn crit damage and debuff resistance buff. But once you get its upgrade, you also gain a 30% battery as well. All of this on a 5-turn cooldown. And if you know anything about Buster Servants, that combination opens up certain possibilities. But we'll get back to that. A lot of early servants have debuff resistance effects, and frankly these tend to be low value. Debuff immunity is pretty good, but mere resistance doesn't really cut it when bosses throw 500% chance debuffs at you. The crit element is also not going to see much use in the early game. Cascu's pretty bad at generating stars, and running a star engine just to let him crit is throwing good money after bad in my book. But despite these drawbacks, you will want to level this skill eventually just for the battery. Cascu's second skill is Protection from Arrows, a 3-hit evade and 3-turn defense buff. Technically speaking, it's slightly better than Lancer Q's version on account of its increased defense. In most situations, I'd pop it immediately since the evasion component is indefinite until you run out of stacks. In a 3-man frontline, this means the odds of him actually taking direct damage are pretty low. Even more so if you go the distance and get this skill to level 10, at which point it benefits from a 5-turn cooldown. Despite this, it makes no direct contributions to his damage, so odds are it'll be your lowest priority. Rounding out Cascu's regular skills is his third, which starts off as Disengage. It's a personal debuff cleanse and heal. However, it recently got a substantial upgrade, becoming At the Lake. It gains a 3-turn attack buff and a 3-part delayed effect. There's a one-time Guts that'll revive him with 3k health. If this Guts is popped, Cascu gains a massive 80% charge for his trouble. Now you might think that's not much better than letting enemies hit you for charge, but you don't have to worry about that thanks to the third element. This buff kills Q after a turn, but because this same skill gives him Guts, it becomes, in effect, a guaranteed delayed 80% battery, on a 5-turn cooldown no less. This upgraded ability looks awfully complicated, but we'll do a practical run-through later in the video so you can see the gears turn. If you're a new player, you don't need to worry about this for a while. This upgrade came out with Avalon LaFey, but it's not just a strengthening quest you can access at your leisure. You need to actually get to Lost Belt 6 and get fairly deep in it. This upgrade doesn't apply until you finish Chapter 19. Caster Q's Noble Phantasm also has an upgrade, though it's thankfully the kind you get the normal way. Wicker Man is an AoE buster attack, and its overcharge is to reduce defense and apply an extremely long-lasting burn. 10 turns, though if you look at the damage on that burn, it's absolutely paltry. But as a part of its upgraded effect, Wicker Man also gets a preemptive multi-turn buster buff. In the early game, you're not really going to be spamming Wicker Man, but keep that last part in the back of your head. Despite being one of the first servants you get in the game, Caster Chulainn is one that a lot of players have opted to leave on the bench, and for good reason. Without his third skill upgrade, he's pretty damn bad. Early game offensive casters have a lot of things going against them. For one, casters suffer a damage penalty on account of their class, and as a 3-star servant, he doesn't have all that much in the way of stats to begin with, at least not without grails. And his mishmash of effects doesn't coalesce into a coherent kit, at least not initially. Debuff resistance, a burn, a crit buff. That last one's an even sicker joke when you realize that Q doesn't have any inherent way of drawing stars onto himself, and casters tend to have really bad absorption values, which is meant to benefit the pure supports. For reference, casters have 50 base star absorption while lancers have 90. The 50 value is good enough to screw over berserkers and avengers, but if you're running other classes with Cascu, good luck getting those stars to stick. Early offensive casters tend to be pretty bad, and if you really need one during Arc 1, Paracelsus tends to give much better value despite his horrendous damage, because his utility suite lets him pivot into a Wave 1 clear for pre-Castoria arts teams. But what about the endgame? That's where Cascu gets a huge leg up, because that combination of the 30% and 80% batteries turns him into a powerful Buster Looper. Technically his first skill upgrade is enough, but that really eats into your damage and I wouldn't recommend it unless you don't have any better options. If you're trying to Cascu Buster Loop before reaching Avalon LaFey, take a look at my Koyanskaya system video where I lay out the steps for 30% chargers. But if you're using Cascu optimally, you'll very much want to use Black Grail. That option's off the table for most coin loopers, but Caster Q is an exception. His huge battery combo puts him in the abnormal category. The pure Koyanskaya version works like this. First of all, you unlock Cascu's Charge Append skill and level it fully. This starts you with 20%. You can substitute this with the Mage's Association Mystic Code or the 10% Append with a 10% Mystic Code, but ideally you want the freedom to pick your code, so try and get it fully leveled. Once you're in the fight, you pop Primeval Rune to get 30%, putting you at 50%. At this point, you also use At the Lake. This means you do need to get to Avalon LaFey and unlock the upgrade first. You have your Koyanskayas use their buster buffs, and one of them also contributes her battery. This gets Q to a full 100%, and then you attack with Wicker Man. At the end of your turn, At the Lake triggers, giving Q Guts, killing him, and then reviving him with 80% charge. On turn 2, you have your other Koyanskaya use her battery on Q. You see, each of these applications shaves 2 turns off Cascu's cooldowns. 2 coin batteries reduce your cooldowns by 4. The turn transition cuts 1 more for a total of 5. At the Lake has a 5-turn cooldown at max level, meaning you can use it again. And you should, since it lets you double up on its attack buff while prepping its end of turn effect. You Wicker Man again, and the At the Lake chain repeats, putting him at 80% for turn 3. At this point, use Primeval Rune again to reach 100%, giving you your final NP. This system has twofold benefits. Firstly, it buoys Cascu's damage with Black Grail and stacked buffs, letting him do quite a solid amount of damage for a low rarity caster. Secondly, Buster Loopers don't have to worry about enemy formations beyond their class. Unless your enemy has enough health to stop your loop, you'll farm a 1-1-1 node just as well as a 3-3-3, and this is extremely convenient once you get the system online. But if you do run into an enemy that stops your momentum, you can run a modified version. This locks your Mystic Coat to one with order change, like the Chaldea combat uniform. The reason is that you'll be swapping an Oberon. You start with both Coin Skies on the field, cast at the Lake, and then followed up with both Coin Batteries and Buster buffs. Then you Wicker Man. At the Lake triggers, and then you start turn 2 with 80% charge. It's off cooldown, so use it again immediately. Then you swap Oberon in to get his 20% battery, Wicker Man again, and move on to turn 3. You just give Cascu Oberon's remaining skills to put him above 100%, use the Mystic Coat attack buff, and then Wicker Man a final time for the kill. You obviously weren't starved for charge, but this approach lets you benefit from Oberon's Ending of Dreams skill. I talk about it a lot more in depth in my Oberon video, but here's the TLDR. Ending of Dreams multiplies the value of NP damage buffs on its target. This translates into a dramatic increase in damage even if your only source of that buff is Oberon's first skill. But because Cascu can run Black Rail, this combo lets you double that as well. This gives you a tremendous amount of punch on the final wave, and if you're not willing to grail Cascu, it'll still let him farm a bunch of neutral nodes he'd have no business in otherwise. Another upside is that Primeval Rune's level doesn't matter, letting you save a crystallized lore. If you're particularly enthusiastic about Caster Coup, you want to acquire both Koyanskaya and Oberon. If you missed either of their first banners, stay tuned because I'll have a video on that. Now, I never mentioned what to do with Koyanskaya's second skill. It's an anti-human trait and attribute buff, and if you're fighting those kinds of enemies, you can benefit from using it immediately. However, if you're in a position where you need to use Ku's regular cards, you can combo it with Primeval Rune to make sure you have enough stars to crit with. Not too bad of a backup in situations where Wicker Man falls short. As a story-locked servant, Caster Coup is kind of a pain in the ass for established accounts to roll, especially now that class-based campaigns are over. To unlock his second append, you need 120 coins. Each copy of a story-locked 3-star gives you 30. Each of the lower bond levels gives you 5. So you would need to get 4 copies of him, 3 of which you need to roll since you get the first for free. And you can shave 1 off if you're willing to grind out bond 6. But realistically, you'd want him at NP5 anyway for damage. This begs the question of how you're going to get copies of him. If you're an endgame player, you can try waiting for the second Oberon banner, but that isn't coming for a long time, so you're just kinda screwed unless you throw YOLOs into the story banner. But if you're a new player, you can actually manipulate the odds in your favor. The story banner adds specific story-locked servants as you complete various chapters in the game, but fresh out of Fuyuki, the only servants in there are Saber Altar, Caster Coup, and the Universal Pulse. Because of this, you can just dump some of your initial quartz in there until you get a satisfactory number of Cascus, and then progress through the main story. If you want to finish London or Camelot and fish for some of the better picks in there, that can work too. Just be aware that once you finish early on, Caster Gilles de Rais will also be in the caster slot, and you're not going to be too happy to see him. Caster Coup is a strange servant. His early game applications are 180 degrees different from his late game build. If you're using him as a caster version of Lancer Coup, this upgrade is technically a nerf since he can't use it without maiming himself, but I'd argue that application was never all that great in the first place. Before his third skill upgrade, Cascu was just one of many low-value offensive casters that didn't do remotely enough damage to justify using them. With his Lost Belt 6 upgrade though, he becomes a potentially economical farmer. And if you have the right supports to back him up, it makes him way more useful than he's ever been. Now he's one of the stronger low-rarity attackers in the game. Good stuff. Thanks for watching. I'll be posting some of my crazier rolls over in Fino and Friends, so take a peek over there if you want to see the absolute chaos that happens. Link on screen. But otherwise, like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more, and come watch me at twitch.tv/Finotaisen where I stream, usually every weekend. This time though, I'll be active throughout the week, including today, 3 PM Pacific time. See you there.